Scandinavian countries have long been admired within their own region and are particularly sought after by individuals from less developed nations looking to emigrate. In these countries, people benefit from high-quality education, a robust welfare state, and a population often noted for their attractive physical appearance. The region is peaceful, free from war, and offers a lifestyle deeply connected with nature. Among these nations, Sweden stands out as one of the most popular destinations for immigrants. But is the idealized image of Sweden and the other Scandinavian countries truly accurate, or is it somewhat exaggerated? In this video, we'll explore various aspects of life in Sweden and let you draw your own conclusions. To start, Sweden is a vast country, covering 528,000 square kilometers. This is significant because, in comparison to other European nations, Sweden's land area is immense. The upside of this is that despite the expansive geography, only 11 million people reside there. To put it in perspective, Sweden has a similar land size to Spain, Thailand, or the state of California in the US, but with a fraction of their populations: 72 million in Thailand, 50 million in Spain, and 40 million in California. This low population density contributes to Sweden's tranquility. In fact, in 2023, Sweden was ranked as the 6th happiest country in the world by research from organizations like CNN and Forbes. Such rankings reinforce the perception that Sweden is a near-perfect country. Among these nations, Sweden stands out as one of the most popular destinations for immigrants. But is the idealized image of Sweden and the other Scandinavian countries truly accurate, or is it somewhat exaggerated? In this video, we'll explore various aspects of life in Sweden and let you draw your own conclusions. To start, Sweden is a vast country, covering 528,000 square kilometers. This is significant because, in comparison to other European nations, Sweden's land area is immense. The upside of this is that despite the expansive geography, only 11 million people reside there. To put it in perspective, Sweden has a similar land size to Spain, Thailand, or the state of California in the US, but with a fraction of their populations: 72 million in Thailand, 50 million in Spain, and 40 million in California. This low population density contributes to Sweden's tranquility. In fact, in 2023, Sweden was ranked as the 6th happiest country in the world by research from organizations like CNN and Forbes. Such rankings reinforce the perception that Sweden is a near-perfect country, even among those who have never visited. Human rights are deeply respected in Sweden, especially regarding children, who are never subjected to physical punishment. The country is also home to globally recognized companies like IKEA, Volvo, and Epidemic Sound, showcasing its innovative spirit. IKEA has maintained its roots in Sweden since its inception. On the other hand, even though Volvo has been owned by a Chinese company for the past decade, the brand continues to be associated with Sweden, consistently producing reliable luxury cars, just as it did in the beginning. When it comes to architecture, Sweden might surprise you depending on your expectations. The roads are impeccably clean and modern. The buildings are typically painted in shades of brick red or cream, with strikingly contrasting colors. If you're from a region far removed from European architecture, you might find the triangular roofed houses in Sweden, which evoke a medieval, castle-like atmosphere, utterly charming. In Stockholm, the capital city, life moves at a calm and steady pace, with people focused on their work or studies. There's no chaotic rush or heavy traffic during commutes. Some residents walk to work, others ride bicycles, and some even opt for electric scooters instead of cars. Still, you'll also notice many ultra-luxury vehicles on the streets, primarily high-end Italian and German brands like Porsche, Mercedes, Ferrari, and Maserati. It's worth mentioning that owning a quality car in Sweden is relatively easy, much like in other European countries. In contrast, in many Middle Eastern and South American nations, buying a car often means paying taxes equal to the vehicle's cost. In Sweden, you can find a nearly new low-mileage Volvo for as little as $10,000 to $15,000. Swedes typically prefer large vehicles with spacious wagon-style trunks, perfect for accommodating children, camping gear, and anything else they might need. In a country blessed with vast forests, lakes, and untouched natural landscapes, Swedes love to spend their weekends outdoors with their families, often loading up their large vehicles for barbecues or hiking trips. And just as a fun fact, Sweden boasts over 220,000 islands. From Stockholm, you can catch ferries or boat tours to explore these islands, although many are uninhabited and wonderfully secluded. Even if island hopping isn't your thing, simply viewing Stockholm from the water can be a serene and peaceful experience. If you're moving to Sweden from a lively, entertainment-rich country like Italy, Germany, or Ukraine, you might find the daily routine in Stockholm a bit slow. Life there revolves around work and tranquility. However, if you're coming from a Middle Eastern or African country, Sweden might feel like paradise due to its high quality of life. Sweden's safety is another highlight. Women and men alike can walk the streets at night without fear, with the chance of encountering any harassment being less than 1%. Simply put, Sweden is an extremely safe country. Sweden's crime rates are notably low compared to global averages. According to recent studies, Sweden ranks 60th on the list of countries with the highest crime rates. Interestingly, many of the crimes committed in the country are attributed to immigrants rather than the local population. High taxes can be a significant burden for newcomers. For instance, if you move to Sweden and work as a freelancer, you'll face a steep tax rate of around 50% on any income deposited into a Swedish bank account. This heavy taxation on freelance earnings can be quite frustrating for those who aren't used to such high rates. On another note, it's often said that Swedes are among the most attractive people in the world. While beauty is subjective, it's undeniable that Swedes stand out, especially when compared to other European countries. The men you see in the streets and parks often look like movie stars, tall, blonde, and impeccably dressed. Both young and older Swedish men take great pride in their appearance, a level of grooming that's rare in many other countries. Swedish men tend to be serious-minded, generally looking for long-term relationships rather than casual flings. At least, that's what people we've spoken to suggest. However, if you're a woman hearing this, don't get too excited. Swedish women are just as stunning. Being an immigrant in Sweden can be challenging, particularly when it comes to fitting in. The locals are not only attractive, but also well-educated and cultured. Swedish women typically have athletic builds, thanks to regular exercise, and they often have natural ash blonde hair and blue eyes. It's also worth mentioning that Tinder is widely used in Sweden. For those unfamiliar with it, Tinder allows you to swipe right if you're interested in someone, and if they swipe right on you as well, you match, and can then meet up. Many people in Sweden use this app to flirt, especially immigrants, because in everyday life, Swedes tend to be reserved and serious, making it harder to meet someone face-to-face without risking rejection. If Tinder isn't your thing, there's also a strong interest in activities like salsa dancing in Sweden, which offers another avenue to meet people. One of Stockholm's greatest assets is its proximity to the sea, specifically the Baltic Sea. The Swedish capital is close to the capitals of Finland and Estonia, Helsinki and Tallinn. The Baltic Sea lies between these three cities, making it easy to travel by sea to these beautiful neighboring capitals. You'll find a similar lifestyle and climate across these three countries. For instance, all three boast a higher oxygen level in the air compared to much of the world. The populations are small, the architecture is stunning, and the people are both educated and attractive. In Sweden, the high oxygen levels are largely due to the fact that forests cover 69% of the land. These forests are rich in pine trees and various plant species, providing a constant supply of fresh air. It's said that only 3% of Sweden's land is urbanized, and even in the cities, nature is never far away. In Stockholm, for example, you'll notice that many buildings are surrounded by trees, and parks are abundant. Swedes have a deep connection with nature. They live among trees, flowers, and insects, and even when constructing buildings, they strive to preserve the natural habitat. This harmony with nature is ingrained in their culture, and it's even reflected in their national anthem, which praises the country's natural beauty with lines like, "My beautiful country, I greet our sky, our sun, and our green lands." But while Sweden has many wonderful qualities, there are also some downsides to consider. If you want to enjoy the high quality of life in Sweden, be prepared to pay $5 or $6 for a cup of tea or coffee at a cafe, or $25 for a plate of pasta. The prices of goods, especially cereals and coffee, have surged since the pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war, leading to inflation rates of around 10%. Dining out or having a coffee has become expensive, both for visitors and locals. However, some argue that if you're earning in Swedish krona, it makes sense to spend it within Sweden. But if you constantly compare the cost of living to countries with weaker currencies, you'll likely find Sweden's prices outrageously high. Interestingly, despite its stable economy, Sweden often ranks low in various economic statistics among European Union countries. This might come as a surprise, but Sweden's economy is not as strong as you might expect, and the cost of living is steep. For example, electricity prices have increased fivefold in the past year, and food inflation is at 9%. A staggering 80% of Swedes are troubled by the rising costs in all areas of life over the past year. Despite this, immigrants still find Sweden appealing. Those granted residence permits in Sweden often find themselves in more elite segments of society compared to other places like London. Those living in Sweden can truly relate to what I'm saying. The immigrants there tend to be more educated, calm, and hardworking compared to those in cities like London or New York. In fact, many immigrants quickly learn Swedish, which is essential for staying in the country, and they often achieve good scores on language exams. When families move to Sweden, they integrate seamlessly into the Swedish lifestyle and culture, often without facing major challenges in adapting. This is particularly true for African immigrants, who are known for their ability to adapt unconditionally to Sweden's rules and way of life. Alongside Africans, there's also a significant population of Syrian, Iranian, and Arab immigrants. Additionally, some blonde, blue-eyed individuals have migrated from Russia and Ukraine. When you speak with immigrants in Sweden, you'll often hear the same sentiment. This is the best country in the world. However, those who struggle with the high cost of living in cities like Stockholm often move to more rural areas. One such place is Skansen, a picturesque village town south of Stockholm, overlooking the Baltic Sea. Skansen also serves as an open-air museum, showcasing Sweden's way of life from centuries ago. If you want to experience nature at its finest, with ducks, streams, lush greenery, and the sounds of birds and insects, it's better to explore the southern regions of Sweden, where the climate is milder. These fairy tale villages are mostly inhabited by people over 50, as younger residents typically move to Stockholm for career opportunities. This video is the first in a series about Sweden in 2024. In the second part, we'll continue to explore the country from both positive and negative perspectives to give you a fuller understanding of life in early 2024. Until then, goodbye. As we delve further into what Sweden is like in 2024, we can talk about how physical activity is a big part of life for people of all ages. No, they aren't rushing to get anywhere. They simply prioritize staying healthy. It's common to see Swedes waking up at 6 a.m. to go for a run. Physical fitness is central to their lives. Moreover, Sweden effectively uses the high taxes it collects to benefit its citizens. The country is a prime example of a welfare state in action. For instance, there's a support fund called Försäkringskassa. Citizens in need can apply for assistance from this fund for various purposes. If you need dental care, such as a checkup or a filling, the government will cover up to 50% of the cost through this fund. Or, if you're very ill and need time off work, you can take 14 days of paid leave without needing to provide a medical report to your employer. Moreover, Sweden effectively uses the high taxes it collects to benefit its citizens. The country is a prime example of a welfare state in action. For instance, there's a support fund called Försäkringskassa. Citizens in need can apply for assistance from this fund for various purposes. If you need dental care, such as a checkup or a filling, the government will cover up to 50% of the cost through this fund. Or, if you're very ill and need time off work, you can take 14 days of paid leave without needing to provide a medical report to your employer. Local residents report that housing prices have increased by more than 50% in the past 2 years. For example, in Stockholm, apartment prices per square meter range from $7,000 to $10,000, while in Gothenburg and Malmö, they range from $4,000 to $6,000. So, if you're looking to buy a 100 square meter home in Sweden, you should expect to pay an average of $500,000. However, if you're not concerned about living in major cities and just want to be in Sweden, you can find cheaper homes in smaller towns. In some areas, homes are even sold through auctions, where you might find opportunities to buy a house in the forest. Swedes appreciate the auction system and enjoy living peaceful lives surrounded by nature. In Sweden, people generally don't start families in their 20s. Instead, most prefer to remain single until their 30s. Marriages typically occur between the ages of 30 and 40. During their 20s, Swedes tend to focus on individual pursuits and personal satisfaction. When they do decide to marry, it's often with the goal of having children or jointly acquiring property. This contrasts with cultures like Spain or Italy, where it's common for people to live with their families until their 40s. In Sweden, young adults usually leave their family homes after turning 18 and move into studio apartments. Scandinavians value independence highly. Moreover, Swedes, along with Norwegians and Danes, consider themselves fortunate when comparing their living conditions to the rest of the world. Some even assert that they've started life with advantages over people in other regions. Their only major complaints are the imbalance between day and night and the cold weather. The harsh climate can have such a profound effect that some surveys suggest it's the leading cause of depression in the country. People who choose to leave Sweden often do so for two main reasons: the severe weather conditions and the high taxes. If you're planning to live in Sweden long-term, it's crucial to take these factors into account. For instance, during the winter months, you might find yourself going to work in the dark and coming home in the dark. Apart from a couple of summer months, this is the typical weather pattern in Sweden. Additionally, not everyone in Sweden is thrilled about the recent influx of migrants. Many locals feel that the newcomers do not share their cultural values and lifestyle, and they worry that this could undermine the essence of Swedish society. In fact, some migrants end up living on the streets, which exacerbates the issue. The majority of these migrants are from African and Arab countries. To integrate successfully and live harmoniously in Sweden, migrants need to adopt Swedish culture and values. Today, nearly 1/5 of Sweden's population, about 2 million people, are immigrants. Sweden has been welcoming immigrants since the 1950s to boost its workforce and production. However, managing the immigrant population has become challenging, with issues such as car theft becoming more prevalent. Sweden also imposes strict penalties for violations such as illegal parking, with fines that can exceed $100. The country is firm about enforcing these rules, so non-compliance can lead to serious consequences. On a lighter note, Stockholm is famous for its cinnamon and cardamom buns, which are often sold in charming bakeries staffed by friendly locals. Many Swedes enjoy spending their free time in these cozy spots, especially when the sun is shining. In Sweden, conversations about politics and religion are rare. Most Swedes are content with their welfare state and public services, so politics is not a frequent topic of discussion. As for religion, it's seen as a personal matter that each individual keeps to themselves. Sweden is known for having one of the highest rates of atheism in the world, with estimates suggesting that between 46% and 85% of the population identify as atheists. Some sources place the atheist population around 30%, ranking Sweden among the top 20 most irreligious countries. Instead of discussing politics or religion, Swedes prefer to talk about everyday matters, like the weather. They also have a tradition called fika, which is similar to Spain's siesta. Fika is a break where people enjoy coffee, cake, or tea while chatting with others. For Swedes, fika is a kind of meditation, a way to refresh their mood. When it comes to transportation, Swedes often rely on the subway. The subway stations in Sweden, much like those in Russia, are located underground and are known for their impressive designs. These stations are so stunning that they create the impression of entering a different world, leaving a lasting impression on first-time visitors. The construction of Sweden's subway stations reflects a deep, artistic intent, with every detail designed to tell a unique story. However, there's an interesting social habit among subway users. They tend to avoid sitting directly across from someone else. The thought of accidentally touching knees or feet makes many Swedes uncomfortable, so they often choose to stand rather than sit opposite another passenger. You could interpret this behavior as a sign of respect for personal space, or perhaps as an overly cautious quirk. It's really up to you. In terms of education, Sweden takes a unique approach with young children. For the first 6 years of school, students don't receive grades or scores. The emphasis is on learning and absorbing knowledge rather than competing for high marks, which helps prevent negative psychological effects on the children. Homework is rare, as most assignments are completed in school, allowing children plenty of time to play outside and enjoy their free time. However, for children who don't speak Swedish, starting school can be challenging. Ukrainian children, for example, often face a difficult adaptation process in Swedish schools due to the language barrier. Swedes also have a strong aversion to wastefulness. More than half of the country's waste is recycled, with designated recycling bins readily available in city centers. The government collects this waste and converts much of it into fuel, which powers urban transportation. With nearly all products made from recyclable materials, less than 10% of waste ends up as non-recyclable, permanent trash. In fact, Sweden even imports garbage from neighboring countries like Finland, turning it into different materials and generating a profit. When Swedes no longer need their clothes, they don't simply throw them away. Instead, they donate them, ensuring that good quality items can still be useful to others. This reflects a broader cultural tendency to avoid waste and maximize the value of personal belongings. Municipal services in Sweden, particularly in Stockholm, are exceptionally well maintained. Even outside the city center, side streets are immaculate, and the buildings are well kept and gleaming. It's not just the upscale areas that are cared for. Ordinary neighborhoods where average income residents live are equally clean and orderly. Despite this, these neighborhoods are quite decent and livable. At the start of every street, you'll find bike racks, and the use of bicycles in Sweden rivals that of cities like Amsterdam and Copenhagen. While it's debatable which city has more bicycles, in Sweden, there's little need for cars and the gasoline they consume. Alongside bicycles, you'll also notice an abundance of baby strollers. Despite Sweden's relatively small population, you frequently see families with young children out and about. Many of these families might be recent immigrants. If you're living in Sweden and have a child, it's important to know that couples are entitled to 480 days of paid parental leave. Imagine being able to take more than a year off work while still receiving your full salary. This policy underscores how the Swedish state prioritizes the well-being and rights of its citizens. Both parents can take time to care for their newborn, and there are even special baby care courses available for fathers. If you think Sweden is the best destination for you, you might want to wait a bit. This video is about a country near Sweden that will surprise you.